G'day to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I'm just heading to North Rocks Dam, and my starting point is Spears Road Reserve, and I want to do a book summary today like I normally do, so that we can take in and highlight the beauty of the suburban area close to my home and overlay it with a message of empowerment where we can absorb and at least think about OPE, other people's experiences, in the form of a book summary. So today's book is entitled Maps of Meaning, and it's written by an accomplished author by the name of Jordan Peterson, who's written quite a few books, and I recall doing a number of book summaries for him and his books, and he is a forthright thinker and somebody who we can all learn from. So I'll head back to the dam, and it's just a beautiful way to spend a Saturday morning. I'm not working today, it just wasn't busy, so we've taken a day off, which I don't mind, and see where this leads us. It was supposed to be overcast and rainy today, but the weatherman got it wrong, thank God. So I'll make the most of the beautiful conditions. So the author kicks off the book with a very, very interesting quote, a very thought-provoking, very provocative sort of quote in terms of what makes people think and how to think, and what makes them tick. And he talks about socialists, and he says that in his observation, socialists are not motivated by the love of the poor. I'll just repeat that because it's a beauty. Socialists are not motivated by the love of the poor, but by the hatred of the rich, despite what they claim. So it says that a lot of people who have socialist values and ideas are not philanthropic, not the sort of people who will go out of their way to rescue people out of poverty. But what drives them is this utter hatred of the tall poppies, the so-called elite, the people who live in privilege, either through luck or through hard work. A tall poppy syndrome, which I guess has infected Australia as well. I know that it's very, very bad in Greece. There's a lot of socialist sort of innuendo and talk amongst people in Greece. And as one person once told me, that the politics in Greece are just rife, and people aren't interested in bettering the lives of mums and dads, but just ruining the life of the so-called invisible elite. Because the Greeks, and all of us mainly, like to blame others for our misfortune, our lack of capability and ability. So the author then goes on to talk about a lot of people use a compassionate ideology as a mask for their real motives, which is resentment born of personal failure and desire for revenge. In essence, what he's saying is that there are people out there who have got chips on their shoulders, and that chip has come through their own personal failure, and there's a desire for revenge as opposed to trying to right the situation. They just want to damage it and ruin it for everybody, and they don't care. Like a bull in a china shop, they'll just go out of their way just to cause as much damage as possible, regardless of whether or not it impacts them and it impacts everybody around them. So he goes on to explain that an ideology is a system of belief that gives people simple rules of dividing the world into good or bad, oppressors and victims. And like everything, he makes a very good point here, that regardless of who you are, you always see yourself as one of the good ones. It's so funny. It's so good. I love that. So regardless of who you are, you could be a bloody drug dealer, you could be a bikie, you could be a murderer, and you'll always think that you are the victim, you're the good one, and everybody else is at fault. Just the way we're wired, apparently. And he goes on to say, and just to extend what I just mentioned before, that some of the worst prisoners wouldn't look out of place at a family barbecue. It's all very funny. I remember once I was working for Serco on a project where we were going to price a remand prison in New Zealand, and part of the task, given that I was doing the costing and the pricing as a commercial manager, was to go and visit a prison up in Brisbane, just to speak to the prison warden and to get a feel for how a prison operates and how the cost structures are put together, and to build rapport and to build a contact, so that as I was going through and pricing the project, to be able to bounce my ideas off people who are living it real life and costing it real life. But one thing that I realised when I went up there, and as I said, I did go into the prison, and I walked in the prison yard and mixed with prisoners, and I looked around, I said, these guys here look like just normal guys. We walked into a room and there were two people there in a leatherworks class doing leather work, and the warden, when we went out, said these two guys here are from rival bikie gangs. Outside of jail they'd be killing each other, but inside jails they're the best of mates, helping each out, working together, no doubt recruiting criminals for other activities once they get out of jail. But as we said, you look at prisoners covered in tats. Yeah, some had tats, some didn't have tats. There were people there who were murderers. There were people there who were rapists. There was a whole gambit of prisoners there, and as the author here alludes to, that most of the prisoners, most of the people that you see in prison, you couldn't tell that they're prisoners, and they'd be the sort of people that you'd see at a barbecue, a family barbecue. They just wouldn't stand out. So he goes on to talk about myths, and he also says something which is really important and interesting, something that got me, shuddering, to tell you the truth. And he said that we're all powerful, we're all capable of being very evil and very violent, and it all depends on the circumstance. So I guess what we should do is we should all pray that we're never forced or put into a position where we need to express ourselves in a violent way, so that we don't end up in jail and be yet another statistic. So he mentions here that there are circumstances that lead people to criminal activity, be it their upbringing, be it the people they hang out with, be it just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, being pissed, being somewhere where you need to intervene, and before you know it, you're involved. But this is what the author was saying, that we need to understand that we're all capable of being extremely violent and extremely evil. Don't know if I subscribe to that fully, but it's food for thought at least, and something to consider as a challenge that we all face. He goes on to talk about myths, how myths which go back hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years are all part of our social makeup. And myths have become really, really powerful in society and in cultures because they formed the foundation of massive, stable and cooperative civilizations that lasted thousands of years. So a lot of people scorn and laugh at myth. I'm Greek and I come from an ancient Greek culture which was shrouded in myth and history and all of that sort of thing. But from what I can understand, all of the myths, or most of the myths, were designed to help humanity make and understand a little bit better what our role is, what our purpose is, and how we can fit in and fit together, and not there just to pass the time and just chit chat and be there just for entertainment. It was more of a social cohesion reason for that. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the myths, a lot of the cultures that we have in the world today, I know that the Greek culture has infused much of Western civilization. And it's important to understand that a lot of those myths, a lot of those initial thoughts, a lot of that history that was passed down ended up making and forming and shaping our society as we have it today. Our legal systems, our government, our vocabulary, the way we talk, the way we entertain, and all of those sorts of things. So there's a purpose for everything. Even our ethics and our morality are founded on things which some people regard as myth. There are people who regard Christianity as myth, and that Jesus never existed. Once again, I don't subscribe to that. I'm a very strong believer. But the more I learn, the more I delve into it, the more I read on my Christian faith, the more I understand that the difference between rights and wrongs are based and founded on a lot of the Christian principles and the Christian learnings that we have had passed to us by Jesus and the fathers and great people of the church. The next point that the author makes is to clarify that science and myth are very different. So we shouldn't mix up science with myth. They're very different. And the difference is, according to Jordan, that science tries to describe the world objectively and empirically, whereas myth attempts to describe the world, myth attempts to describe the subjective world in terms of effective or motivational significance. So it's just a different way of looking at things and describing things. So he goes on to say here that myth has led to action, creates moral judgment about what is good and bad, and the actions create values and valuations of things. It enables us to prioritize and be able to figure out in our own minds what's better, what's the better option. Is it A or B, based on the myths that have shaped our world? Because what we do is, when we're evaluating things, in our mind's eye, what we're saying to ourselves is, if we do A as opposed to B, will our future A be better than future B, based on the decisions we make? And he also goes on to say that myths create, as we said before, a value hierarchy that are shaped by people across a culture, and it guides people's actions. Because at the end of the day, myths help to achieve meaningful goals. When we have myths, or if we have a religion, all of those things shape our decisions and our actions, and it's designed to help us achieve meaningful goals, to enable us to live in harmony and peace. And when you look back at the many religions, I don't understand a lot of different cultures. As I say, I'm Christian, but when I look back at the ancient Greek civilization and culture, where they had polytheism, many different gods, those gods basically were used to help us understand the different characteristics of man, the strengths, the weaknesses. We had a god of war, we had a god of the ocean, we had a god of the sky. So all of those things were personified to help people understand the interaction between nature and our human person. So polytheism had personifications of transpersonal instincts, and it was all there to show us that there was a constant battle, there was a constant fight for balance. Just like in our own lives, we are always fighting our yin and our yang, our pluses and minuses, our strengths, our weaknesses, our goodness, our badness. So that's basically it. I think he finishes off here to talk about the games that people play are important as well. So when we play sports, when we play games as children, all of those things are important because they help us understand the power of cooperation, the power of playing to rules and to observing and to respecting rules. They teach us how to be fair, and basically they teach us a lot of life lessons. And that's why games when we're growing up and games when we're adults as well are important, because they help us understand our place in the world and how to deal with the challenges that we all face. And we just need to keep on striving, we need to keep on competing, we need to keep on pushing and fighting to keep our place and to maintain our status quo, and hopefully to grow better, bigger and better one day. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I've come out to this little area here and it just smells absolutely divine. We've got houses up there on the cliff, and we've got this greenery just full of green, just a bed, an ocean of lush green, and it smells beautiful. We've got some lantana here. I just love the smell of lantana as well. And I think I'll finish up here. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode, and I look forward to coming to you again from another place with another message of empowerment, where we can showcase the beauty of suburban Sydney, the beauty of this country, Australia, and overlay it with a message of empowerment, of OPE, other people's experience, where we can live, learn and pass it on, where we can be partners in each other's growth and development, and we can take lessons, OPE, other people's experience lessons, and add it to our inventory of skills, so that we can be in a better position to grow and incorporate it and be partners in each other's growth and development. Take care, Yassas, and we'll chat again shortly. Bye for now.